guys, and welcome back to GP Fans on YouTube. My name is Luther, and I'm here to break down the two races that we've had in the triple header and preview the final one in Jeddah. But first off, let's start with Bahrain, because we will need to go to Red Bull, because Red Bull are in crisis. I mean, they literally have had a management crisis meeting coming off what was a horror show in Bahrain. We call it a horror show because how often do you get to see Max Verstappen running in last place, even if it's just for a lap? That is a rarity. Red Bull had issues on track. Red Bull had issues in the pits. Red Bull had far from a clean weekend. You had Yuki Tsunoda and Max Verstappen battling brake issues in qualifying and throughout the Grand Prix, something that Red Bull have acknowledged was a system issue, something that they're going to have to fix over time, not something that they can just do a reset and change it like that. That's something that's going to plague them for a min. You had Max Verstappen qualify 7th, fall back to 9th after he couldn't catch up with Esteban Ocon, and also got overtaken by Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton. He then ditched the hards, went to last place after a very slow pit stop due to the lights not working in their pits. So Max Verstappen didn't know when he could launch off the pits. And then he then pitted again to get rid of his hards once he started dropping back. And in that, he had another slow stop because his front right tire wouldn't come on. So there wasn't just a lack of performance on track, there was a lack of performance externally as well. On the other side of the garage, Yuki Tsunoda finally got points. Finally, the second-seated Red Bull driver did get some points for the team, actually contributed to the team's point tally. They're no longer a one-driver team in the Constructors' Championship due to Yuki Tsunoda's 2 points. But Max Verstappen finished 34 seconds behind Oscar Piastri, the winner. So after the race, Helmut Marko has spoken to various outlets about this crisis meeting. They say that Red Bull are in quite a dire state and they need to get a fix soon. They don't imagine it's something that will be fixed very quickly. Their car's been tricky. We know their car's been tricky for a very long time. And Max Verstappen's brilliance just hit it for so long that now even he's struggling. It's being shown just how bad that car is. Helmut Marko has also admitted that Red Bull are worried about being able to keep Verstappen there long term, which is what kind of piqued my interest out of all of this. There are the issues that they're having on the track. Their car is clearly a very bad car, but Max Verstappen leaving the team is more than a crisis. But what are Max Verstappen's options in the future? That's the question. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, multiple millions if you're Max Verstappen. You have options like Mercedes. There's been talk about Mercedes being an option for Max Verstappen for a while now. But the issue is George Russell is in ridiculous form. Now, I'm not an idiot. Max Verstappen is the best driver on the grid. So yes, regardless of the form that George Russell's in, would you drop George Russell for Max Verstappen? If you're Mercedes and you said no, I'd have to ask you, what are you thinking? Aston Martin obviously spoken a lot about being potential place for Max Verstappen to go, especially with the Adrian Newey links. But my question would be, why should I believe that Max Verstappen will be given a better car at Aston Martin than Red Bull have been able to give him? I get that they have Adrian Newey and they've brought a lot of different people, Enrique Cardile and others, to Aston Martin. But over the past few years, all we've seen since the start of 2023, when Fernando Alonso was getting podium after podium, is a downslope in their trajectory. So Aston Martin seems more like an idea than a formality of them being good. Whereas I know for a fact I've seen Red Bull give Vettel 4 World Championship winning cars. I've seen them give Max Verstappen multiple race winning cars and 4 World Championship winning cars. Okay, you could argue that last season's car wasn't necessarily a World Championship car and Max Verstappen took the car to that level, but still they gave him a car good enough to win races at the start of the season specifically. And then you've got to think about a team like Ferrari, where it's like, oh, are they going to be annoyed at the fact that because they've signed up to this Lewis Hamilton experiment, and he's now, I know he got disqualified in one of the races, and so did Charles Leclerc, but he's crossed the line behind Leclerc in all 4 races. Are they going to be annoyed that they signed up to this Lewis Hamilton experiment 1 year before Max Verstappen could potentially be on the market? It's a genuine question that Ferrari have to think about. Did they make the wrong decision going for Lewis Hamilton in this era of his career when Max Verstappen now is potentially going to be available due to the lack of performance that Red Bull have been giving him. There are also a lot of other factors. Look, George Russell is out of contract at the end of this year, so is Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli only has a 1-year contract. George Russell has said there's no rush to sign a new contract with Mercedes at this time. Max Verstappen also has a long-term contract. He's contracted with Red Bull until 2028. But there are numerous reports about him possibly having a performance release clause, which means that if he dropped back a certain place in the driver's standings, he has an out of his contract. Whether or not Max Verstappen is that loyal to Red Bull is another story. I could imagine he would be. They've given him so much. He's obviously given them so much. And the relationship does seem to be a strong one. And I think that's also what has made Red Bull so successful. The fact that they are so cutthroat when they have a couple of bad races like this. They are ahead of Ferrari in the driver standings, and Yuki Tsunoda has given them 2 points, and they're having crisis meetings, and Ferrari aren't. Let that sink in for a second. The level of standards Red Bull put themselves to are higher right now than the most successful team in F1 history. That's how bad it's gotten for Ferrari at that point. That's another whole story. As a Ferrari fan, I don't really want to cry and go into that. But in Bahrain, there was some happiness for people. Oscar Piastri is proving to be, in my opinion, the McLaren driver that I would trust over the course of the season, going head-to-head with Max Verstappen. Something that, at this moment, it looks like he doesn't necessarily need to do. But if he does have to go head-to-head with his teammate Lando Norris, I think he might be able to do it. Oscar Piastri is only in his 3rd season in Formula One. Guys, his biggest issue last season was his qualifying pace. He lost the qualifying head-to-head to Lando Norris last season, 20-4. This season, through 4 races, it's 2-2. This season, through 4 races, he has 2 wins. Lando Norris has 1. Oscar Piastri finished 9th in Australia. Lando Norris has finished on the podium every single race this season, and the gap between them at the top of the championship is 3 points. To me, where the difference is between the two McLaren drivers is in how they're handling the pressure of having the fastest car on the grid. Every single time I hear Oscar Piastri talk about or is asked about how fast their car is, he owns it. It's obvious we have the fastest car. It would be not truthful to say anything otherwise, I think was his quote after the Bahrain Grand Prix. But every time George Russell's mentioned how quick the McLaren is, or Max Verstappen has mentioned how quick the McLaren is, Lando Norris is so quick to counter it. Nah, our car's not that good. You are underplaying what me and Oscar are doing. Our car, we're actually struggling a lot, this, that, the other. But Oscar Piastri is completely going against what his teammate's saying. And he is saying, no, our car is that good. Lando Norris has said he's struggling with his car. He says it's quite unpredictable compared to what they had last year. But for me, he has been underwhelming in what I thought was a good experience for him last year. I didn't think he ever had a chance of winning the title, but I thought it was good for him to have the pressure of, I have to get a result in every single race if I want to have any chance of winning this title. So he had that pressure. It wasn't necessarily, oh, I actually have a very strong chance of winning the title. It was like, I have to deliver, otherwise I'm going to lose the title. He had that, and I thought that would help him this year. But I feel like with Russell and Verstappen, who I do think are genuinely trying to put pressure on Lando Norris on purpose, constantly talking about how good their car is, he seems to not be enjoying that game, the mind games that those two are playing with him. And I think they are doing it on purpose. Every single race weekend, since testing, every single weekend, George Russell has not failed to mention the McLaren. Every single one. Last weekend after Max Verstappen's win in Japan, he said if he was in the McLaren, no one would have seen him. He would have already left the track by the time he was being interviewed. Lando Norris obviously then replied to that saying that Max Verstappen is good at some things, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are better than him at some other things, and that he would love Max Verstappen to have a try at their McLaren to see just how much he would enjoy it. I can tell you right now, Max Verstappen would enjoy that McLaren very much. He would, compared to what he's driving in the Red Bull, I'm sure he would absolutely love to drive that McLaren. But Oscar Piastri is just delivering on track. Like I said, the issue was his qualifying. It looks like, through the 5 races we've had, if you include the sprint race, all of them have been won by the pole sitter. So it's been quite hard to battle at the front of the grids. And I think if he has improved his qualifying, I don't see a reason why he's not going to beat his teammate. And I think that then gives McLaren a bit of a dilemma, because I wonder how much Lando Norris would want to sit there and be the teammate of someone who will be consistently not battling, but beating him to titles. And where could Lando Norris go after his contract's up? Because Oscar Piastri is also signed up long-term at McLaren. What would their futures look like for the two drivers? And who would McLaren put their eggs, whose basket would they put all their eggs in? You know, because whilst we know that Zach Brown has a big love for Lando Norris, I've always felt that Andrea Stella was more in the Oscar Piastri business than the Lando Norris business. Oscar Piastri seems more composed, more calm, more reliable, more level-headed. He doesn't seem to need the coaching through a Grand Prix that Lando Norris does. You know, that's my thing with Oscar Piastri. He just is such a cool customer. And when you're battling against Max Verstappen, who is so ruthless, knows how to do the mind games. I remember last season when McLaren decided that they were going to use Oscar Piastri to help aid Lando Norris's title bid. Max Verstappen instantly came out and said, if I was Oscar Piastri, would I do that? Oscar Piastri's too good to do that. He was playing mind games with Lando Norris then. It's that type of stuff that I think Oscar is so... They're calling him the new Iceman to Kimi Räikkönen because of that level-headedness, that just calm and composedness. Nicholas said it. He said it on one of our shows that he's going to be the one to win the title if it comes from McLaren. And I can't agree more. Nicholas, I can't agree more with what you said, because he, only in his third season, he just looks to be at a different level. And Oscar Piastri's biggest issues last season, for example, was his slow start to the season. This season, I mean, he's our first multi-winner of the season, so I don't think that's an issue. The final thing I want to talk about Bahrain is strategy, because we got to experience something that we rarely experience in Formula One lately, because tires and tire management and tire strategy has just become so dull and boring. There's never any, and I mean any, differentiation in strategy. So after the safety car, I'm just going to read you all 20 tires that each driver was on, from Piastri down in the order they finished. So Piastri, Russell, Norris, Leclerc, you get the vibe of where they finished. So medium, soft, medium, hard, hard, medium, hard, hard, soft, 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 medium, hard, 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 soft, hard, medium, hard, medium. The differentiation in strategy made for such an entertaining race. That period in time where Ferrari had offset their tires in the middle of the race and were on newer mediums compared to everyone. And that meant while their car was nowhere near as quick as the McLaren or even probably the Mercedes, they could charge down on them. And they could take advantage of, despite having the slower car, they still could try and battle for the win. We don't get enough of that in Formula One, where you look at the entire grid and there's 4 drivers on the softs at this period in time after the safety car. 5 drivers, sorry. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drivers on the medium, and the rest of them are on the hards. Every single place you looked, it looked like a rainbow, and that created such fun racing because people are on different tire strategies. People are attempting to hit different time deltas to manage their tires. It just made for such an entertaining race, and there's just not enough differentiation in strategy now in Formula One, where you'll have people on offset tire strategies, or you have loads of different people across the grid on different tires. And I'm hoping for more of that across this season. But we move on to Jeddah, and I want to look at the standings in Formula One right now, because Lando Norris is on 77 points, Oscar Piastri is on 74 points, Max Verstappen's on 69 points, and George Russell's on 63 points, before Charles Leclerc is a distant 5th with 32 points. We now know, obviously, that distance is really not that much, and he could get rid of that in an instant. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Ferrari fan. But those 4 people at the front, bear in mind, can I just say George Russell has been absolutely spectacular. 3 podiums through 4 races, absolutely fantastic. But those 4 drivers, if they continue in the vein that they're driving at, could give us an absolutely spectacular season. And hopefully we do get the Ferrari boys and Kimi Antonelli maybe even joining the battle later on. Jeddah's a very unique circuit. So far this season, we don't really have a direct comparison to it. I guess you could kind of relate Jeddah a bit to the middle sector of Australia, but it's still not a perfect example. So it's going to give the teams a different kind of track to work with. So we don't know what we're going to see from this year's cars there, but I'm excited. Jeddah is one of those places where the tiniest mistake gets punished. You have to be pinpoint perfect. So you're going to see certain drivers who are better qualifiers. For example, the Charles Leclerc, he's always very good in a race like Jeddah or a race like Singapore or Monaco, a qualifying session in those places, because when you get closer to the limit, I always think he is more willing to risk it in qualifying. And that's why he gets those little extra bits in those Singapores or the Monacos or the Baku, Jeddah. He's always very good in qualifying in those. So I expect him to be doing very good. But I also just expect the McLaren to be fantastic. The McLaren seems to be a car that you can take to any track and it will perform. So I expect to be here next week talking once again about how spectacular the McLaren looked and maybe how spectacular Lando Norris has bounced back from what was a difficult weekend for him, because very poor qualifying. Can't expect you to qualify at that position when you are in the car that you're in. He'll be hoping for a bounce back weekend. He'll be hoping to dethrone his teammate who was at the top of the last step. He's obviously, Lando Norris is still at the top of the driver standings, despite it feeling like he's been underwhelming since that opener in Austria. I'll be expecting to see a bit more from him this weekend. And I think it will tell us a lot about how he's doing mentally by how he does in Jeddah, because he'll need a bounce back, because it seems like since Australia, it's been a bit of like a slow decline, whereas teammate has been rising and rising and rising. See you guys next week.